Hi there, I'm Linda and this is Huttons Valley Permaculture. Well, it's been 5 years since my channel's been on YouTube and it's just past 10,000k subscribers. In today's video, we're going to, as a celebration, have a tour of the property and relate what was happening back in 2021 with what's happening now in 2026. I'll show a little bit about how it really started back in 2018 to 19. But most of all, it's going to celebrate the evolution of my little permaculture world, and I'll share some of the lessons learned. My garden started right next to my house in an area that I call my kitchen garden. It started as a grassy area and has evolved into a little food forest today. I planned the garden carefully, including mini swales and a pond. It was a fairly wild place back in 2021. The only difference now, I suppose, is that the trees, shrubs and berry plants are much larger with greater production. The space still needs managing, but that is minimal and definitely worth the effort for the year-round food supplied. The next area I started to develop was the front yard veggie garden, but I'll leave a closer look at that until the end of the video. As we saw in the kitchen garden, thinking about water in the system is of critical importance, and that is why I invested in a dam and swale system. In 2019, I completed a permaculture design certificate course in which I planned out my farm. Water flows, fire risks, prevailing wind and views all need to be considered in your design overview. I drew up a planting plan, which I've only kind of followed. Not all of my water plans have come to fruition either, but I'm happy with how things are going now it's 2026. When I first bought the property, it was an overgrazed paddock. Back in 2019, my dam was dug along with the swale system. It took a bit of repair work and planting to get all the freshly dug areas stable. Unfortunately, not stable enough. Being inundated with rain shortly after the dam and swales were put in, the dam filled, the overflow had to be dug out deeper, and the dam wall started to collapse. Fortunately, it didn't move any further than in those first few days in 2019, but my dam in 2026 still has a leak. I've put willows in the dam wall, and with their mesh-type root system, I hope that it holds the soil in place. Another area that was impacted with early heavy rains was my bottom swale level fill spillway. With little grasses or plant growth in the early days, there was nothing to hold the soil in place, and the deluge caused a blowout. It was a few years until I got that repaired. Like 2019, 2021 certainly had a lot of rain. It was fantastic to see my plan working. Water is held up in the top swale to sink into the soil over time, so it doesn't just quickly leave the system. Water is also received from the road, and instead of heading down a gully to the creek, it is diverted via the roadside swale to the dam. My ducks certainly love these heavy rain days. The bottom swale also holds water to sink it in, but it also acts as an overflow for the dam should it ever fill. The overflow was last needed a few years ago. The last couple of years have been really dry, and you can see that in 2026 my dam is quite low, but there's still plenty of water for my ducks to enjoy. Now that we've checked out the water system, let's have a look at what's planted. Most of the productive trees were planted in 2019, along with some support species. Not everything took off, but you can see in 2021, with the first of my tours, a lot of the trees had grown substantially. Now, let's have a look at my roadside swale. I've got 2 almond trees at the start of the swale. In 2021 they were quite small, but now they're quite large. This one here has been eaten down by cows a little bit too much, but the other tree is big and strong and hasn't had the same impact. Now my almond trees should be producing, but I find that they flower in a time of year that is subject to frost still, and that really knocks back the flowers. And the birds in the area love the little fruit as soon as they're getting going. So I really haven't had anything from these trees. This tree here is a quince tree. To start with, this was affected by bush rats that ate through some of the roots, so it kind of was almost falling over. So it's had a bit of recovery to do, and it has been challenged with a little bit of black spot. So this is a work in progress. The feijoa is a recent addition, certainly wasn't here back in 2021. Moving along the swale, we come to my 2 fig trees. This one's my heartleaf fig tree, which gives really lovely fruit. And the other one here was a plant that really hasn't done a lot, but I was really surprised with looking back through my 2021 videos that this actually did have 2 fruits on it back then. Now it hasn't done anything since, and I wonder if it just needs a really good prune to knock it back to kind of kick it back into life. One of the things I have learnt over time is just by completing a PDC doesn't mean you're an expert on all these plants. So there's always a little bit of homework to do to manage them. These 2 rhubarb plants came from when I split one of my original plants from the kitchen garden. They seem to do well in some years that have a bit of rain, but struggle in the drier conditions. I've added in a couple of little stone fruit trees just here. So skinny you can barely see them. But I'm hoping those 2 will be as big and tall and strong as this cherry tree is, which was planted 7 years ago. This dormant shrub is my pomegranate, which was just a little bit smaller back in 2021. Back then it didn't have any signs of fruit, but these days you can see here they do get a little bit bigger than that, but I'm really waiting for those big, beautiful fruits with all those pink seeds in them to come along. In a recent kitchen garden video, I showed how easy it is to propagate currant plants. I've got black currants and red currants, which I got from my kitchen garden and have spread through various areas of my swale system. The red currants are over there. These shrubs here are black currants, and they should come back to life come spring. Towards the end of the swale, which don't look so fantastic in winter, are my fabulous plum trees. Now they've given harvest each year virtually since I put them in. I've got the Mariposa here, which has still got lots of its leaves on, and just at the back there, looking pretty sad, is my Satsuma, but it's such a giving tree. It doesn't seem to have an extensive branch system, but believe you me, it carries a lot of fruit on the branches it has. You can see back in 2021, a really fantastic harvest. And again in 2026, I got an abundance of fruit. Coming out of my roadside swale, we enter my duck zone. I currently have 7 ducks. The foxes have been pretty brutal over the last year. Back in 2021, I had more ducks of both species. Back then, I was having some ducks for meat, but I don't do that now, preferring to enjoy their company and the eggs that they provide. Moving along now to the bottom swale, this is the one that the dam overflow flows into during heavy rains. The 2019 plantings have 2 years growth on them when we start out with videos in 2021, but there's still a lot of grass on the booms. I spent a bit of time through 2021 increasing plantings to get on top of this. In 2026, you can see that it's a very unmanaged space. I really need to put some effort into dealing with all the volunteer and planted acacias that have grown up so large and have really got away from me. I've got 4 apple trees in this acacia jungle. This one is my largest. It's a Granny Smith. Now the others down the other end are smaller and they're more like eating apples. But none of these trees have really given any fruit because they've been challenged with all the cover. And that's my 4th apple tree there, which is a bonza eating apple. Now, one of the lessons I have learned during my time here is that I probably need a few more pairs of these and a bit more time to complete all the plans I have. But I do what I can when I can, and I've got to be happy with that. Now, something that wasn't here in 2021 was my macadamia trees that have grown from about this big to where they are now. They still kind of get attacked by cows occasionally and the frost if I'm not quick enough to get them covered. but they're slowly getting up there, so I'm sure one day they'll produce. Towards the end of my swale, I've got 2 walnut trees. This one here, and there's one right at the end. They haven't produced as yet, but I'm hoping that they will soon. I'll try and get down a lot of this support tree and really open up the area for them so they've got absolutely full sun come summer, and that kind of might help with the production. You can see 2021 to 2026, they have certainly shot up there. Now we've just got to get that production happening. One area of my bottom swale that's looking pretty bare at the moment is this grassy zone here. I did try planting some stone fruit, one of which is here, and there's another struggling with the grasses down below. But what I think I might do is add in a couple of hazelnut trees. They're the ones that produce nuts consistently and have done for a number of years, whereas I'm struggling to get these other nut trees productive. Hazelnuts are also happy growing with walnuts nearby, so those trees certainly won't create an issue for them. I'll be adding hazel planting to my list of things to do. As we move up from my bottom swale to my top swale, it's an opportune time to look at my animal management system. I've got a very early video which explains this perfectly. I move everyone every day with just an occasional day off. I've created a circuit that moves around the property over a 30 to 60 day period. It's great for grass growth and weed control, but also for animal health with less exposure to parasites. Knowing the benefits keeps me motivated to do this each day. In addition to improving the soil health in my paddocks, the animals provide me with meat. Lambs and calves have been born and raised on unsprayed pastures and enjoy a great life before their final day comes. It's not a day I take lightly, but I'm grateful for the food that follows. The 2026 grazing crew are just here enjoying today's offering of grass, and this beautiful paddock will be what they enjoy tomorrow. Up near my top swale, I have my apiary. There's nothing much different between 2021 and now, maybe just a couple of extra hives and perhaps less honey. Recent dry conditions have reduced the nectar flow in the area, so I've had smaller honey harvests to ensure the bees have plenty. Now let's look at the changes to my top swale from 2021 to 2026. As you can see here, not all of my plantings are successful. Here is the mulberry 5 years ago in 2021, and it doesn't look much different, so not sure really what's happening with this tree. This end of the swale I've recently decided to leave as a flowering plantation for bees. The main player here is the Tagasasti, which flowers in winter, and that's fantastic for the bees. I might diversify planting here to increase flowering species to cover all throughout the year. It's definitely a work in progress. Further along the swale you can see the acacia growth, while my almond tree, due to pruning, doesn't look much different. In the top swale I've got additional hazelnut trees that I've moved in since 2021, and also some stone fruit. This one's a peach tree that's getting up there. So I've got 3 additional hazelnuts on the lower side of this top swale, and just here I've got 3 of my almond trees. Now I think I mentioned earlier that the almonds just haven't seemed to be productive in the last few years. This one back in 2021 had quite a number of fruit on it, and I did get some almonds from it, but frosts at the wrong time and birds eating the fruit seem to have really decimated any other chance of getting the almonds. So that's why I've added in more hazelnut trees, because they seem to be successful, whereas these trees are pretty disappointing. Moving along through the top swale, past some acacia trees, which again need some management, I've got my pear trees. And like the apple trees on my bottom swale, these have suffered from not enough light. So I've been trying to deal with that. I've got piles of mulch that I need to move from chopping down some trees on this side. This one's still to go. Back in 2021, these trees were quite large then. I wished I'd just taken the tops out of them and I wouldn't have so much to deal with, but it's certainly on my 2026 list to deal with all of this sort of growth and give just a bit more love to my productive species. We are developing a theme that more chop and drop needs to be done to return the light and space to the productive trees, in this case the pears, so that they can flourish. One of my early videos in 2021 was a chop and drop video where I'm harvesting some Tagasasti to mulch my hazelnut trees. You can see both the olives and hazels get plenty more light. And you can see that these hazels have definitely benefited from that earlier chop and drop. You can see the size of them. And one of the Tagasasti has completely been chopped down and is not needed any longer. As the productive trees get bigger, these support trees are no longer needed and can be taken out completely. A few weeks ago, I took out some of the large acacias that had been shading these olive trees. Plenty more sun is needed for these to get productive, so time has come to really open up the canopy. It just leaves all of this material to chop up and get onto the swale to help suppress the grass. In 2021, the trees are a lot smaller and there's quite a lot of grassy areas, so much so that I needed to get in there with the brush cutter. The area now has large trees and shrubs shading the ground, and the chop and drop mulching also helps to suppress the grass. The peach area was the first that I planned out with a guild of plants which support each other, and I planned it out according to that plan. The surviving plants seem to be the larger varieties like the trees and gooseberries, some rosemaries and elderflower, with the smaller ones not surviving. The grasses were just a bit too much for them to deal with. Of the small herby type plants that I planted back then, the only one that seemed to survive was some lemon balm, which is kind of no surprise given that it's such a vigorous, strong growing plant. Now, a recent addition has been two sad looking orange trees. They're probably just going to die, but I thought I'd get them out of the pots and put them in the ground and at least give them a bit of a chance. Down this end of the swale, we've got the apricot. Well, I call it a guild. It wasn't as officially planted out as the peaches. There's an apricot behind here and one just here with this massive Tagasasti tree about to come to flower, and I'll soon be chopping that back for a bit more mulch. And here's the same trees in 2021 with the vigorous Tagasasti in between. And right down the end of the swale, we've got some raspberries, which wasn't there back in 2021. I planted that sort of maybe 22, 23, and they're starting to spread through here now. They do well when they've got access to water, but during summer I don't water them, so I don't get as much from this patch as I could really. Looking back at some of my 2021 videos, you can see that these trees have grown and sort of covered over this area a lot more, and there's a lot less light, which doesn't help with the growth of the raspberries or even the apricots. So I'll have to chop some of it back, but I have to keep in mind the other function of this zone is that it's a real shelter belt for my animals when they move through here. So it provides great shade in summer, and it also keeps them out of the wet, windy, cold conditions during winter. So I'll have to retain some of the cover just for them. Now it's time to move through to the veggie garden. For the first few years I was here, I moved my chickens around my front garden in a mobile coop as I slowly built my garden with a lot of cardboard, compost and wood chip. The garden, as you see here in 2021 and now in 2026, look very similar, as most of the garden beds were finished during the 2020 lockdowns. Since then I've been building the soil. The first of my compost paths were really decomposed wood chip paths. Before discovering no dig, I had dug out the first two garden beds, which resulted in these deep paths, which I now love for compost making. In this 2021 video, I dig out the first of these paths and spread around the material to help improve soil in various garden beds. I've continued to be a huge believer in the compost paths, and I might extend my deep beds to other areas in the garden, but I'll be sure to show you if I do. From 2021 to 2026, I've continued to build my garden beds with the use of compost. Now in the background there, you can see my dilapidated compost bin system, which looked a lot more put together back in 2021. I have recently been just flipping hot composts sort of out in piles here, which I've found a little bit easier, but I'll still be putting my bins together sort of later in the year because it's great for just chucking things in when you're not ready to build a compost. Another source of great material to add to my garden beds has of course come from my chicken yard. Back in 2021, this was just a frame and I've since put that together. And while these ladies would love to get out into my veggie garden, they just do a bit too much damage. I do from time to time release them from here though. With some electric fences, I can kind of move them around the external areas, not in my veggie garden, just to give them access to a bit more fresh stuff. The garden was a productive space back in 2021 with loads of veggies being enjoyed. After a setback last year, I've returned the garden to production once again. The 2021 garden still had its wild spaces and so does my 2026 garden. The size is such that it's hard to overmanage, which is great for plants to flower and go to seed and provides great habitat for birds and insects. So what are the lessons I've learnt from 21 to 26? Number one is good management of organic material which supports the life of soil organisms, plants and animals. Moving organic material from where it is a problem to where it is a solution is what it's all about. Good permaculture design puts these two close to each other so minimal time and energy is expended with the move. My management of this system is still evolving. Perhaps a few extra hands around the place would help, but I'm doing what I can when I can and I'm being rewarded with plenty of good healthy food, plenty of sunshine and loads of exercise. And I really feel blessed to have all of that in my life. There'll be a link in the description to a playlist that includes all the videos that I've used in the making of this tour video. So check that out if you want to see what's gone on in the past. I'd just like to thank you all for subscribing, commenting, watching and sharing my videos. It's all helped reach this milestone of mine, the 10,000K. I look forward to providing you with lots more videos, hopefully inspiration to get something like this happening at your place. I'd truly like to thank you all and I'll see you in the next one.